So today I started getting ready to try to go flying tomorrow, and I decided I would go through my platforms, give them one last check before we start all this up again. So I took the little Nano Talon, connected it to Mission Planner, which you can see here on the screen, and I've switched to two screens for you here so you can see this better. And I started checking it out. Things went kind of squirrely, especially towards when I got trying to arm it and get the stabilization to work. So I brought it back inside and started looking a little closer what was going on, and I noticed that the accelerometer seemed off. When you take the nose and point it down, it rolls. Same when you point it up, it rolls. And if you roll the airplane, there you got all sky. That way you got all ground. This isn't right. So I was a little shocked.
So I immediately said to myself, well, somehow the AHRS orientation, the flight controller orientation, got bumped in the parameters. So I come in here and looked at AHRS orientation. It's a 2. A 2 is yaw 90 degrees. And if you look at the controller in the airplane, you can see it's yawed 90 degrees. It's rotated 90 degrees clockwise, as you're seeing it in there. The forward part of the flight controller is to the left in this picture. So that confused me right there. Just for kicks and grins, this is for the flight controller orientation here. Actually, there's just a few more of these parameters up here, right here, the AHRS custom pitch, roll, and yaw that can be used to tell the software what orientation the flight controller's in. There's also a compass orientation. On each compass, this is compass 2's orientation. So geez, I came in here, like I say, and this is right. It is what it should be. So I jumped back over here, recalibrated the accelerometers real quick. It didn't fix it. It was still exactly the same. Now, I did upgrade 2 versions of Ardu plane since I flew this airplane. I upgraded it to 421 and 422, I believe. So I assume that is when the problem started. So I just didn't. I kept trying things and it just didn't work for me. So the next thing I tried was replacing the flight controller. I opened up the little box they have it in inside there and just swapped it out with another flight controller and closed it back up. And you can just imagine my delight when the new controller did exactly the same thing. I was just beside myself at that point. So then I started stepping back to 4.2.1 firmware. It did the same thing. So I stepped back to the 4.17 firmware. I knew I flew it with this. It did the same thing. I stepped back to the 4.16 firmware. It was fine. Yeah, don't you just love those? So I stepped back up to the 4.17. I was saving out parameters elsewhere to do a comparison what was different inside the parameters. Well, now 4.17 worked. And I stepped back up to 421, and it worked. I said, the heck with it, step back up to 422. It didn't work. It was back to the improper reaction to orientation, let's say. It wasn't right. I knew it wouldn't fly that way. So I started going down inside these perimeters, and I came down to this perimeter called BRD underscore type, board type. And it's a 5. And that says Pixhawk Mini 6. Oops. Pixhawk Mini. 6 is Pixhawk's 2X Lim or something. 13. I go, wait a minute, that ain't right. It's not a Pixhawk. That's that MRO board. Jump back out. Play with the orientation again. It ain't right. Come back into that perimeter and looked at it again and go, well, I'm going to set it to what I think it should be. So if you look right here, 20 says AUAV 2.1.
And I remember while I was changing that flight controller out, I remember seeing right there on the silk screen, AUAV 2.1 version 2. By the way, when I told you it was rotated 90 degrees in the airframe, right there's the area for orientation, and right there is the word front. There's a word back on it someplace. Oh well. I don't see the word back right now. Oh, right there. It says rear, not back. Right there, rear. So there's your front and your arrow. And if you remember, it was in the airframe this way. So that's forward, rotated 90 degrees clockwise.
So I came in here and I changed this from a 5 to a 20. Right out the perimeters. Restarted the platform.
So now with that perimeter changed, that one simple perimeter, if we point the nose up, we see all blue sky. If we point the nose down, we see all green grass. And by the same token, if we roll the airplane, we see it roll exactly like it should on the screen. So everything's back to normal now.
However, I was far from normal. I couldn't figure out what was going on there. I'd never seen board type before. So I started looking into some of my other platforms that use a different controller. And what I've found is board type for me, because of the controllers I have, only comes up in the perimeter list when I'm on the MRO hardware. If I connect into a, well, let me just do it real quick here. So right now, I am connected to a Maytech flight controller. We'll look at the BRD underscore parameters here. Do you see a BRD underscore type? No, you don't. It should be RS. It should be right here after safety option, S seal, board seal number. It should probably be at the bottom of this list for an alphabetical order, BRD, S and then T. When I went through other backflips, I haven't even really told you about all the back flips I went through, because I did go back looking through other hardware and other hardware's perimeters and going, wait, why is there no BRD underscore types? And the only thing I could pull that down to, I'm going to switch back over to the MRO flight controller real quick. Now I'm back on the MRO flight controller, and watch what happens when I do BRD underscore as a search term. Look at all these BRD underscore perimeters that don't even exist on the Matex. I mean, we stopped right down in here, wasn't it? Safety option. And I see some other board heat. I don't think I saw heat related stuff. Arming check will fail if temperature lower than board heat target. Board heater P gain. Board heater integrator maximum. There's some good stuff in here. Board IO. Anyway, long and the short of it is, as you see here, board type only appears when the the MRO flight controller is connected. It says this allows selection of a P4 or V-Brain board type. If set to 0, then the board is auto-detected. Well, let's try that. I'm going to set the board to 0. I'm going to write that parameter out. I'm going to cycle the flight controller, which will make it disconnect from Mission Planner here. So there it powered up with that board type at 0. We'll reconnect to that controller. BRD underscore. Oh, look there. Well, it's back to a 5. Just the same thing that happened to me when I upgraded. So it's not properly, if set to 0, then the board type is auto-detected. Okay. That's being attempted, and it may just be in PX4. That's why they have it in parentheses. But it's not working. This should be a 20, not a 5. Now, I don't know if between the last time I flew this and during those 2 upgrades of firmware, if I bumped board type, or if board type was in fact at a 0 at some point in that, and misdetected on a boot up and got set to a 5. I can set it to a 0 and show you on a reboot it does not properly detect as a 20. It should be 20. I'm going to go ahead and write that out. There, that platform's back ready to fly again. And if I compare that to my Nano Talon EVO 422 perimeters, you can see everything's the same. The INS and barometer will move around between saves to the hard drive. The values are just moving. That's why they show difference. They're not nothing to worry about. And this is just boot count, reset, and runtime, and barometer. So technically that is, even though there's perimeters there, it's perfect comparison. There's nothing really, there's no, if this was a 5 and I compared to this, then it would show me, oops, I'll write that out. I think I probably have to reboot too. Yep. Don't have to reboot. You do have to write it. So see if there was a difference in one of the perimeters that mattered, like board type, when I compared it to my other perimeter, it would show. So I don't want to write that, but I do want to put this back to a 20. write that out to my controller. And there you are. That platform is now ready to fly again. Now, I have no idea how this got screwed up. Frequently I'll use my wheel on my mouse to scroll parameters. I'll be here and I'll just start using my mouse to do that. Well, you know, that center mouse button is actually a click. So I worry sometimes if I get over in these areas, I can accidentally click on them. Some of these, as you know, a menu comes up, like arming check. A menu comes up and you select from a group of items. And then based on this, it creates a number for you. I don't often, when I'm scrolling, see those pop up and that I could accidentally get up there and check or uncheck something when I'm trying this to get down to the S's for servo. I want to see what servo 10's function is. So I think I should probably stop doing that. What I'm trying to say is I have no idea how board type got set for a 5, to a 5 for the Nano Talon. But when it's a 5 and it's an improper board, it doesn't matter how many times you calibrate the accelerometers. It doesn't matter how many times you replace the flight controller. You will not fix the problem. It doesn't matter how many times you go back and look at previous firmwares. Just all the backflips I was doing yesterday. For 8 or 10 hours on this junk. So these things can be frustrating, but again, I cannot tell you why. If this somehow during those updates, 4.21 and 4.22, even set to a 0, it would come up as a 5 and would be malfunctioning. Now, because this says if set to the 0, then the board type is auto-detected, and if I do that, it comes up as a 5 and it's wrong. I think the auto-detection is not working correctly for this board, and that's what did it. How that got set from a 20 to a 5, because you see, if you go back, quick, let's go back real quick, and look at even an old piece of firmware. Because this is on a MRO flight controller, that board type has been in these parameters and has been with me for a year or more. I just didn't know it was there. So, don't know how that parameter got bumped off of 20. I do know that if it does, then it doesn't auto-detect correctly. And I do know you can waste a hell of a lot of time trying to find little problems like this in Ardu. Anyway, that was my day yesterday. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more platforms just to kind of go over like this before I fly again. I did start going over the 2 new mini Talons yesterday, and boy, the software wasn't fully set up in them. I started playing with one of the new mini Talons with automatic takeoff, and the next thing I knew, not fun to have props on in your shop sometimes. Next thing I knew, papers were flying everywhere and getting shredded by a prop. Because evidently I had done all the other parameters for all the platforms to be the same, but I had forgot to do anything with takeoff. Actually, I had done the takeoff portion right here, the 36 and the 144. I had not changed the takeoff throttle slew rate. And therefore, because at that time it was 0. Man, I was standing there, had the airplane up in the air, battery in it, everything like it was going to be thrown for real. And when I moved the plane forward for shake to wake, there was zero slew rate on the throttle, so it just went to 100% boom. And these mini Talons got some pretty good thrust to them. It kind of scared me a little bit too there. I was scared by it, so I had to come back into those last two mini Talons. And while I was in there, I decided to play with the throttle takeoff slew. So it was at 20. I think that's what everybody recommended to me. And the rest of my parameters in there, you remember I had that one little crash, and this wasn't set correctly, and you guys got me straightened out on that. But the rest of this stuff, I have played with this too, changing the pitch from a 15 to a 20. But I'm still leaving my approximately 120 foot, 120 foot approximate target for circling after takeoff. And still, this is what, 300, 400 and something feet away. I guess my eyesight's better, so I'm still leaving them. But I hadn't actually done anything with the throttle slew on those last two platforms for some reason. Like I say, if this is a 0, it comes up immediately. So I did have the 20. So while I was doing that, I just said the heck with it. And I started playing with that. When I set it to the 20 and you shake it, and then it comes up slowly, kind of over 5 seconds, like the documentation says here, sort of. Then I put it to a 10. And boy, did it really ramp up slowly when it was on a 10. So I set it to a 50. Ramps up quick. I think it's like about 2 seconds in my humble opinion. I don't know. So I settled on a 40. I changed mine from 20 to 40 so that it comes up a little faster than that 20. That was just giving me too long to sit around and think about it. The 40 gives me about 2 seconds. I arm the platform. I have to do that in two fashions now because I've put a throttle cut, which I call an arm, on my radio. That defeats channel 3 unless the switch is in the arm position. The other two positions, the throttle will not work. Therefore, you cannot arm or do plane with its throttle down into the right function until you flip that switch. Also, like I say, it's a throttle cut. And it's also, when it's armed, the radio is saving all the data to the SD card. It's also an SD card save on and off when it's armed or not armed. So there's a lot of functions going on that one switch. So I have to turn that switch on the radio. That lets the throttle channel start working. I have to go down and to the right to actually arm in or do plane. Then I pull the switch for takeoff, which I do have on a physical switch. I pull that switch into takeoff. I raise the throttle to 100%. And now we're ready. It's ready for the shake to wake. Like I say, during that one thing with the mini Talon, boy, it just went immediately, and surprised me. You don't want surprises with an airplane like this in your shop with a prop on it. And then you throw it. And that gives me about 2 seconds after I do the shake to wake to get ready to make a nice, slightly up from level throw with the platform. You know, I've never successfully done an auto launch. My last auto launch was an auto crash that destroyed the motor in this exact platform, actually, the Nano Talon. I burned up the motor. That's when I had the throttle max set to 70 in here for some reason. I don't know. I think the default is 0 so that it goes with your other throttle max perimeter If it's a 0, it falls back on. This perimeter right here, it's also a 0. So I don't know how that one got set to a 70. You know, there's probably 100% possibility that I did that. But it resulted in a crash. Okay. Boy, I hope you guys don't have to go through much crap like this. But if you do get in trouble, message me. By the way, YouTube drops some of my message, doesn't notify me that I've got comments or anything. Sometimes I'm going to go out of town again tomorrow, and when I get back, I'm going to just set up that Facebook page and have all the places where you can for sure get in touch with me, and get in touch with me quickly on that Facebook page, and I'm going to put that at the bottom of all my videos. Thank you guys so much. I hope this helps someone.